In this section, we will look at the majority of the functions that are listed here. As you can see, it is not a long list. We will cover as many as we can and time permits, but as usual, we encourage you to go to the DAX function reference online and research the others that we are not able to cover. You will find other examples and other ideas that might come in useful for you. That said, let's go ahead and go into the demo. Let's start by opening Excel, a blank workbook, and we're going to start by adding a worksheet. Going to name it months. Nothing complex, just month ID and the month name. So we already know it's going to be 12 of those. Going to add them one by one. The same with the month names. Once they're added, we will be able to add them to our data model. Great. To make this look a little bit more appealing, let's go ahead and format it as a table. We have headers. And we're going to go ahead into Power Pivot. Going to mark this area, click Power Pivot, and add to the data model. Notice that it's creating the data model and it already added our table. Let's go ahead and name it properly, months. There we go. We have our data available for us. So let's go ahead into the creation of formulas. The first one we want to create is called switch. And the entire syntax of what we want to do is enter a formula which is very long, and I will explain here all the details. Switch formula is, if you're familiar with you develop in C# or any other language, there's some similarity to it. It's almost as a bunch of ifs nested together. With that in mind, what we're doing is asking if it is the month ID matches 1, then the month is corresponding, assign it to January. For February, which if it matches to number 2, assign February name. 3 and so on. It continues all the way to the end. It looks successful. Notice it matched everything that we were looking for. So we're going to name this column appropriately. We can call it month matched month name. That should put us right on where we want it to be. Actually, we're just going to call it match month. Great. Now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and add another column. We're going to assign quarters to the columns here. So for that to happen, we have to use an if function. We're going to request a match against the month ID and check if this one is less than 4. That would mean that it belongs to Q1. According to the parameters of the if function, this should be the false. But what we can do is we can nest functions, as I mentioned before, and we start all over again. If it is less, since it didn't match from 1 to 3, we're going to ask if it matches between 4 and 6. If that is the case, then we assign it Q2. Once again, if it's false, we start another if. If the month ID is less than 10, then it is Q3. And last, if the month ID is less than 13, means it is Q4. we start closing all the statements. Notice that it bolds already where it's finishing the closing statement. And let's check to see if it matches. It does. Take a look. Q1 goes all the way up to March. Q2 from April to June, and July through September is Q3, ending with October through December in Q4. Let's call this column quarters. Next, what else can we do? How about testing the AND function? Let's see if the month and the match month are not blank. So we're going to create another formula, calculated column, and we're going to match it against the match month. We're going to ask if it is not blank, then this is the second value. And if the quarter also is not blank, the result should be, if both of these are true, we get a true statement here. Notice, we did. Let's call this one matched month and quarter. Now let's go ahead and test the OR function. What OR does is it'll return a true value if one of these is actually true. But we're going to change things a little bit here. We're going to ask if it is blank. So if either the quarter or the match month is blank, it'll return a true. We close it and notice that it failed. And that's fine. That's what we wanted for it to happen. We're going to name this matched month or quarter. Now that we have that, we wanted to test one function to check for errors. Let's think about if error, how we can utilize it. Let's open the formula, and it's asking if there's a value, then there will be a value if there is an error. What can we do to cause an error? Why don't we divide the month ID by the month name? We know that's definitely not going to work. So what are we going to assign? We're going to assign zeros just to make sure that things are fine. This should cause an error. So let's go ahead and take a look. And exactly, let's name this correctly. Error column. Great. We've tested quite a few functions, logical functions so far, but we wanted to see what happens if we remove the month name. It's redundant in this case because switch statement's taking care of the month names for us. So what happens if I delete it? If I click on this column, I can't delete it here because this is the data model. But if I switch to my workbook, that's a different story. Let's go ahead, right click and delete. Now let's go back to our Power Pivot area and update. Notice that it's gone. And with it, we have an error. Why? Because we were referencing the month name before. That's fine. Let's fix that problem. Let's use matched month. And there we go. We're up and running and working. Notice we use the majority of those functions, logical functions, within our workbook in a very easy fashion. Go ahead, take the time to look at a DAX function reference online for further functions that we did not cover in this section.